Yo, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Illini Audible podcast. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the pod. As always, I really appreciate it. And of course, today we are here. We are back. I'm back home after covering what was, for the first time in quite a while, a real Illinois football game, a regular season game at Memorial Stadium. So a lot of fun, a lot of intrigue. It was good to be back at Memorial Stadium. I always enjoy being out there and covering the team, covering football. It's been really fun. But obviously, we're here to talk about Illinois football and how it is they did last night. It'll be in the morning when I post this, but it's like currently 12 a.m. It's 1 a.m. What time is it right now? It's 1 a.m. So let's talk some football, shall we? Right? Illinois dominates Western Illinois 52 to 53 to 52 to 3, excuse me. God, can you tell it's really late? Anyways, they took care of business is really what they needed to do and what they did. So obviously good stuff for Illinois to come into this game and do exactly what they needed to do, which was dominate for a large part, dominate this team, dominate this game, and leave no doubt. And really, what they needed to do was exactly the opposite of what Duke did in their game, which was they struggled for a little while. The defense was a little shaky, and then obviously the offense carried a lot of their weight, but it didn't inspire a lot of optimism. In this case, Illinois did the exact opposite. They pretty much had the same results as they had last season's opener, which, if that is an indicator, then great. Then Illinois is in store for a good season. But, anyways, Illinois did it, like I said, exactly what they needed to do. Luke Altmaier looked as good as he did last season, as good as he did last season's opener. So take that as you will. 217 total yards. Good stuff from the quarterback here. It just absolutely poised. Kind of what we've typically come to expect from Luke Altmaier, right? Everything seemed to be fair, right? 17 for 21 passing attempts, 217 yards, 3 touchdowns, 81 or 214 passer rating. Good stuff on the offense. I thought obviously the story of I guess on the offensive side of the ball, if I may, this just fell. The story of the offensive side of the ball, if I may, is Hank Beatty and his production. 5 total catches, 108 yards, no touchdowns, but 108 yards, long ball of 57 yards. Excuse me, 57. A long of 59, and obviously a kick return, a punt return, excuse me, that went 69 yards. Nice. But went 69 yards back for a touchdown. First time since 2013 that's happened. So congratulations to Hank Beatty for that accomplishment. But obviously, good results for Hank Beatty. It's something that I the program had been selling, right? The idea that uh, these two players, Hank Beatty and Colin Dixon, we'll get into Colin Dixon later, but Hank Beatty was a guy that's supposed to be this really good player coming into the season. It's a player that Illinois was selling very much, that was very high on throughout the course of spring training camp. And here you see the results. Granted, against a FCS school of Western Illinois, but still, right? I mean, they always say it's hard to win football games, and to have him produce at that level is great. It's great for him. It was also surprised. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised because this was a kind of a test run for what the season could bring in store for this particular guy. Need to get myself some water. But this particular guy, and the guy I'm talking about is Justin Bowick, right? Because this is, as we've mentioned on this podcast multiple times, is a beast. This is a huge. I mean, down in the field, like, like I've talked to this guy, but I mean, you see him on the field. This guy's towering, and to have this guy as a weapon, and they particularly use them in the red zone, 2 touchdowns, uh, and he had that production there. But it, to, this guy could be really good. Justin Bullock, a guy who certainly has the physical attributes to be an excellent wide receiver. However, maybe lacks the prowess to have that kind of success. Now he did have a couple mistakes throughout this game, which kind of strike you as inconsistencies, right? Still needs to work on a couple of things, but I think overall you were pleased with what you saw in him. Now, granted, like I said, an FCS school, but this is also a guy who played at Eastern Illinois and Ball State, so it's a double-edged sword in that way. But if it's any indicator, then Justin Bullock might be, like I said before, one of those Guwagi guys who get out of jail free card, as Zeno called it a couple days ago, that you could use in the red zone as a legitimate weapon. That might be the idea that Illinois is selling, or that Illinois is trying to project for this particular player. And who's to say that it won't work? I mean, there it might be a process, and it might, for this guy, there might be some heavy learning curves, but you have a guy who has some serious physical attributes. It's just a matter of seeing whether or not they're going to be able to have this guy uh, be able to grow into that role. And so that'll be something to monitor, because I had a conversation with him. The reason he wanted to come to this school is because of the resources, because of the coaching staff, as many other players do. But Illinois also saw a guy with the physical attributes, a guy who can be a serious dude on this team, and who's to say maybe he won't? Who's to say that maybe he'll grow into kind of a prominent role in this wide receiver room? There's still a lot of questions, right? Because granted, obviously, Western Illinois, but encouraging signs. And now moving to the running backs, right? Obviously, great stuff that you saw from pretty much every running back on this team, right? After what I talked about, the loss of Josh McCray. But let's focus on who's here right now. Aiden Lawfrey, nine carries, 101 yards, 2 touchdowns, a long of 57. Excellent game for him today. Obviously, a game for him that we it was good. It was just good to see. Caden Fagan, a game that for him meant to was an encourager, right? Like it's something that you want to monitor, and you want to see results, because this is a guy who hadn't played football in a long time. 13 carries, 74 yards. Good stuff from him. 1 touchdown. A touchdown that he really did fight a lot in, and is a very physical back. And so to have him come back, show a couple signs of encouragement is good. Good for him. And but the guy I came away with very impressed was Khalil Valentine. Right, 9 carries, 51 yards, long 17. But still, I was really impressed with this particular guy because of the pure speed. How crafty this guy, how shifty this guy is. I hadn't recalled how shifty he was, but this guy is so fast. The only concern, probably one of the concerns that you do have for him going forward, is what's going to happen when you face really, really big competition, the huge defenders, guys in the Big Ten that can clobber you. How will Khalil Valentine respond to those sort of players, those sort of hits? Those are the questions that you'd like to see being answered at some point in the future. But to be honest, it was encouraging for me to see this guy who had a career high in carries and carry attempts, but still, obviously a lot of room for him to grow. But Brett Bielema talked about it in the post game. It's the idea of having a variety of different flavors in the backfield, and you have two really huge bulldozers. Aiden Lawfrey is a guy who can catch the ball. He's very good catching the ball and taking off. Caden Fagan handoff and being very physical, pushing forward. Khalil Valentine is one of those really shifty, really quick, fast guys. He also has that ability to catch the ball and take off. So a lot of good stuff that you saw from this running back room that is encouraging. And obviously you think about what it could look like. Now I will say I think one of my concerns is that injuries have happened in the past. I think that if you lose one of these guys, like last year you had the luxury of having a Josh McRae. You had four guys in the room, and at any point, three of those guys could suffice, which that ended up happening because of Caden Fagan's injury. But now you only have those three really prominent guys. If you lose one of those guys, how are you going to replace that production? How are you going to replace that? Yeah, you never want to put that out in the air, but it's a possibility in this physical game and the way that football is played. But obviously it's not something that is of concern right now because it hasn't happened. So uh but I do worry. But still, Illinois, good to see the amount of rushing yards that they had throughout this game. Obviously, take it with a grain of salt. Western Illinois, how much do you really learn from this game? But still, encouraging. I thought the defensive line really settled in throughout I'd say the second quarter, latter half of the game, and so that was also encouraging to see those guys get out there, get after the quarterback. Gave Akis obviously with a huge forced fumble pretty early on, and just obviously always excellent to see him compete at that level. I was I, I do think that, and going back to the wide receivers, sorry, I'm a little bit over the place, but going back to the wide receivers, I certainly hope that at some point we do see a couple other guys, right? I at first, and based on how they had talked about Hudson Clement, you would think that Hudson Clement would have had more receptions coming into this game. Unfortunately for him, he was only targeted once for 5 yards. So, uh, how much of that do you have to worry about? Malik Elzy, also a guy that I thought wasn't really targeted at all. And so it's one of those things that you kind of look at and you're like, okay, well, if you squint your eye, then you could see the production, but how much of that is actually real? And so gonna have to kind of follow those players as the season unfolds and as these players kind of develop, as these storylines develop. So something to monitor. But yeah, it was good to see how exactly this team kind of operated under the season opener. So good stuff. Also, it was a sellout crowd. Sorry, it wasn't a sellout crowd. It was close. I mean, the student section, it looked like it was significant. It was significant. Like it was pretty full. So if that's something that Illinois fans care about, if you guys care about, I mean, the student section was pretty full, and I don't think that it not hasn't necessarily been the case throughout a lot of time in Champaign. Um, but all right, let's go a little nugget about the offense that Brett Bielema kind of told us about in the post game. Offensive lineman Brandon Hanson started this game. Now, obviously, this is a game against Western Illinois, right? Maybe this situation would necessarily transpire if you were playing, let's say, Ohio State, but it did because week one, Western Illinois. Brandon Henderson, offensive lineman, showed up late to a meeting, and Brett Bielema said, "Well, you're not going to start because you came pretty late." And so I think that's transparency and accountability, and so I think I'm surprised that Brett Bielema would even tell us that, like, be transparent about that, because it often feels like everyone gushes about their program and everything is good and rightfully so when you're winning. But I was very interested to hear this. This sort of thing kind of stood out, I guess. But I guess good for Brett Bielema and being honest with his players and having that wherewithal to call him out publicly, because this is kind of how it is in the professional world. And so I guess preparing these players for that potential is also important. All right, but obviously moving on, a lot of things that overall I thought a lot of things were done right. There probably isn't a whole lot of to take away from this game, just purely uh, based on production, based on how this team just kind of panned out and everything, and how everything kind of just happened. Uh, Illinois obviously had to win this game, and Western Illinois had very little chance to win this game. We talked about it a lot. It was a lot of it was for the check, and Illinois is one of those programs that's expected to be really good. So really the challenge will be how will they handle going into week 2 against Duke, and how will this roster and this lineup kind of evolve. We got our first clues though. There's no question about that. Our first clues are here in terms of the way that these players were deployed, the way that this team kind of played, and the results they had. Another note: Jaheim Clark, defensive back, cornerback, typical starter. He did not play today because of a hamstring injury. He should be back around week 3, maybe week 4, but week 3 is what Brent Belema said. Anyways, a lot of good things though for this offense. A lot of good things for this team. I'm excited to see how they end up deploying a lot of these weapons in Duke, and just the preparation that will go into having to travel cross country to face a program like Duke, and a program that really struggled kind of in the beginning of that first game, but then found their way. And so you just wonder how exactly it is that Illinois' roster will continue to shape Illinois' lineup. The number of flavors that were used, the thing that stands out to me for this game is the number of flavors that were used, the number of players, the number of wide receivers that were used, that got receptions in this game. It felt like it was promoting a lot of Hank Beatty, but it also felt like they were trying to figure out who that main target is. And I asked Luke Altmaier about who this alpha could end up being, and if that's still the case, or if is it determined that it's Hank Beatty, or is it still up in the air, or is that still even relevant? And obviously, he talked about all these guys could be pretty good, but he still thinks that there's one guy that there will be a guy who ends up stepping up, who ends up becoming that alpha. So to me, uh, that could be an indicator. It could be Hank Beatty. Now, to me, Hank Beatty is a guy who is a bit too scrappy, maybe a bit undersized to be that go-to guy. Uh, but I was interested in the way that this kind of shaped up, and Hank Beatty being a guy that they went to consistently, but in the red zone, it kind of turned into Justin Bowick challenging the defense and going up and getting it. So I thought that was super interesting. I think that I honestly though I do believe that the wide receiver core will continue to see different flavors as the season moves along, until something feels just right. Maybe reach that Goldilocks standard. It'll be interesting to find out how exactly it is that they deploy these guys, because there's so much intrigue, because a lot of these guys kind of have similar hype, but it's really going to end up being who's going to emerge. And Luke's talked about it, and the fact that he believes in that there's going to be one guy that emerges is kind of an indicator. Then I mean, he's the quarterback, and so very interesting to see. Obviously, there are things that this team has to clean up going forward. They talked about it extensively. It's the end of half series that they had a bit of trouble with. Is how will they navigate those going forward? They have to be clean. I will say I think I was impressed with, you know, I think I don't think 5 penalties for 60 yards. I think it could be better. But given that it was the first game, like I don't think it was too bad. Like it just obviously it was in their territory. Obviously it was the first game of the season. But all things considered, I don't necessarily think that is a total concern. There were a couple times that Illinois did have blatant, you know, flags, blatant mistakes, but I think that's something that will happen occasionally. Uh, it's hard to really play perfect football in the Big Ten, just in general. But still, overall, great game for Illinois. I thought that a lot of things were kind of what we expected, like an opportunity for Khalil Valentine, and I think he did take advantage of that. Luke Allmeyer looked solid. Ethan Hampton ended up getting into the game. Granted, he didn't throw all that much. He didn't really need to though. So you obviously, I think you see how this wide receiver core kind of ended, and you think, okay, no, it looks like the targets are kind of skewed, and the guys who were left with less targets are Kapka Jones, Colin Dixon, Hudson Clement. I would also argue that Malik Elzy didn't get all that many targets, and that he, for the most part, was not really a factor in this game, which I I thought maybe he would be. But it was interesting to see how they targeted Beatty, Justin Bowick. Granted, not that many targets, not that honestly, 18 total like attempts to wide receivers, so or receivers in general, including tight ends and running backs. But I think that it wasn't anything like crazy. Like I said, the offensive operation wasn't anything crazy, and it was just a game that I think fans could come in and enjoy and look forward to week two. It was an establisher. It was a good establisher. Illinois now feels good going into week two, and Illinois has to feel good about where it is they stand. Shouldn't lose any ground in terms of the post game. Shouldn't lose any ground into the rankings. Western Illinois cast their check. Everyone's happy, and let's all go home. So with that, guys, that's gonna do it for me in this podcast. I am pretty exhausted, but I hope that this my thoughts could offer some sort of insight if that's of any value to you. I will be back. We will be doing a Duke preview pod on Monday. It's a very special guest. I'm excited for you guys to meet her, and we will be back at some on Monday. Yeah, Monday to kick off the week. It'll be Labor Day, but should be fun. Excited to cover the rest of this season. Obviously, good kickoff for this team, and we'll see where it is that they end up. It was encouraging. If I think there was a lot of similarities between last year's game against EIU and this game, so it should be fun to really follow along this team, and however far it is that they get along. For now, this is a good start, and stick with it, guys. So subscribe, rate, review if you so please. Thank you so much for taking a listen. I really appreciate it, and see you next one. Peace.